Mayor, did you get my email that I've got to leave for a doctor's appointment?
I just looked at it. Yep, I
Okay,
just seen
thank
that.
you.
Shortly before 4, you have to take off?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mayor, we are live and recording, so you can begin whenever you'd like.
Okay. Let me take a look here. I don't see Council President Morton yet. There he is. Okay. All right, we'll call this work session to order. Wednesday, April 7th, time is 1 p.m. Open it up for visitor comments. If you have a comment, you can go into the participant area. If you click on your screen and go all the way down, and you can raise your hand. We'll give it just a minute here to see if there's any visitor comments.
Mayor, I know Scott Stockwell is just getting on and he wanted to make a public comment.
Okay. I'm not seeing any others on there. Okay, let's go ahead and allow Scott to chime in here.
Well, good afternoon. How's everyone doing today?
Good.
Fantastic. Good to see you all. I just want to take a minute to comment on the public safety facility that has been discussed. So I'll be relatively quick. Is this the time, Mayor Schultz?
This is the time. This is public comments. Yes.
Okay, so here's my feelings. That the public safety facility is well over 50 years old, and our community has essentially outgrown that facility. 21st century law enforcement is significantly different than 20th century law enforcement. When the facility was built, high tech was an electric typewriter. Things have changed just a little bit since then. The size and diversity of the staff of our police force has significantly changed, as well as our community, in addition to the services that they provide and the services that our community expects. And we need a facility that supports those. Our officers also need the appropriate space where they can confidentially meet with community members, write reports. Those spaces need to be safe. And frankly, they need to be welcoming to those in need and looking for support. So, I ask that the city council absolutely consider supporting supporting the public safety facility. There's that talk about defunding police, and frankly, I think now's the time to invest in police. And I can recall a couple meetings back listening to some pretty impressive statistics of approval and just the work that our local law enforcement in St. Helens has done. And I just think what could be happening if there is a facility that met the needs of our community, a facility that provided the training that our law enforcement folks deserve, that's adequate and effective. And I just think of what more could our police and law enforcement do to support our community. I think the sky's the limit with the right equipment facility. So again, I think that our community is in a little bit of a renaissance. We've seen buildings going up all over the place. We've got support in the schools. I'm proud to see that there's support for law enforcement, and I want to see these things continue to see our little town growing and becoming bigger and better. So that is all that I have to say, and certainly thank you all for your service. Appreciate the work you're doing. I know that it's not easy doing public work like this.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, any other visitor comments? Not seeing no other hands raised here.
I don't see
Matt, are
any.
you? I'm not seeing any either. Okay. All right, so we'll go on to our first item for discussion is recreation program semi-annual report. Parks and Rec Manager Shonda Duggan.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Hello.
So Matt is going to start a little presentation for me. So we're just going to keep it kind of brief. The last time I met with you all was back in October talking about recreation. And today we're just going to touch on recreation. And if you have any questions for me, if you want to ask those, totally open to that. So our first thing that I wanted to go over with is a skill set that I've been really dialing into since everything with COVID. We haven't been doing as many programs. So I've really been looking at grant opportunities and writing some grants. So you can see here the grants that we've gotten for 2020, 2021, total $79,250. And that's several different grants that I've applied for. And people love St. Helens. St. Helens is just that target area that's rural, and we have enough stuff that's going on that people want to support that. So I have about 4 other grants in the pipeline right now that I'm waiting to hear back, and I should hear back in the mid-May. And so a lot of this will help with our summer programming that we're planning on doing with our partnership with the St. Helens School District. Recreation services, back in our 2019-2020, we brought in about $110,000, which I thought was pretty impressive with it being such a brand new program. A lot of that came from our after school programming and also our sports that we did. And all of that went back into the community by using local folks to employ those positions, as well as materials and other rental fees. This year, we're at about $6,000, and that's a lot because of COVID. We had to shut down a lot of our programming and are just starting to slowly open things back up. We're starting a soccer skills and drills league that starts this Saturday. So that's our first league that we've been able to do for about a year. And the folks seem really excited about that. As you all know, we have that $2 recreation utility fee, which has really been helpful while we're still new and growing and trying to figure out, our staffing and what sort of needs the community has. That's scheduled to sunset in December of 2021. So I would like to have some more conversation in the future about what that looks like, and talking to the Parks and Trails Commission on what their recommendations are as well for if we, want to put another recommendation to have a fee like that, or what that looks like for the future. So Matt, if you'll go to the next slide. So pivoting our programs and activities with COVID. So a lot of the activities that we have done are more nature-based outdoor activities. And Nature Buddies has been our biggest program that we have partnered with the St. Helens Public Library. And that program brings in kiddos ages 1 through 6 and their parents to McCormick Park, and we do some sort of nature-based activity. On the previous screen, there was a grant on there for $3,000 through the Northwest Learning Hub, and they liked that program so much that they wanted to see it continue. And so we were able to obtain those funds for that. The soccer camps, I talked a little bit about that. We start that this Saturday. We're going to use the brand new middle school turf for that. So that is super exciting, especially I think for parents, so they're not having to load muddy kids into the car, and then also just really strengthens that school district partnership that we have, and showing off the new spaces that are available to our kids out here. Activity kits, we have handed out about 3,400 activity kits since last summer. And what those look like is once a week, people can come to the recreation center and pick up some sort of activity kit that has a STEM project, an art project, and other learning activities to take home and do them. And then after school clubs, we're starting up our after school clubs again. We have a running group that starts next week. And then we also have a Sketch St. Helens group that starts up shortly. And we're just looking at all the different ways that we can utilize volunteers, community members, and also get the kids doing something, because they've had a hard year of not doing things. So we're really looking for that. Our walking groups haven't been as successful as they have in the past. I think a lot of that is, with the weather right now and people just kind of tiptoeing back into activities, but we hope to revamp those the same way as we did before. And what we did with those is we had rec staff that started them, and then they got so popular that we had volunteers that continued them for us, and they were meeting up to 5 days a week. And a lot of them was our older demographic, and they really found a lot of friendship and belonging and stuff in those groups. So we are looking forward to starting those again. One thing on the horizon is the church purchase that we did. So with that purchase, we're really excited because it's right on the other side of the high school, and there's new, fields being built there that we could utilize for different activities. And I've had a lot of conversation in the community about what they would like to see that building used for. And one of the models that I have seen come up again and again is community center hubs. And I actually am going to have Matt play just a really short, I think it's a 1-minute-long video kind of what a community center hub is, so that there is a little bit more information for that. So if you'll go ahead and play that for me, Matt. I don't hear any sound.
Park and recreation professionals have emerged as public health leaders dedicated to improving health outcomes, advancing health equity, and enhancing quality of life for all by helping their agencies step into the critical role of community wellness hubs. Community wellness hubs exist to promote access to vital health services, especially for our most vulnerable and historically marginalized communities. They're trusted gathering places for activities like youth sports, fitness classes, out-of-school time programs, and more, where people can access nutrition, education, healthcare, and other essential services that directly influence health outcomes. What does a community wellness hub look like in action? They're food access points, like farmers markets and community gardens, places to find enrollment assistance for programs like SNAP and WIC. They offer chronic disease management and health literacy programming, They're a resource for mental and behavioral health services and a link to diverse healthcare and social service providers throughout the community. As park and recreation professionals continue stepping up to make system-wide changes that prioritize community health and well-being, we believe they can be a catalyst for advancing health equity and improving health outcomes for all people. The National Recreation and Park Association is committed to supporting our nation's park and recreation agencies serving as community wellness hubs. To find our best practice guides, case studies, and tools, visit nrpa.org.
Thank you. So community wellness hubs is kind of, I mean, we already kind of serve that sort of purpose here in the community, but we want to dial that in a little bit more. A lot of times you can showcase the range of services in the community for easy to find community resources. How many times have we went to try to find a calendar or some information and just felt like we couldn't do it? We would really like to be a catalyst for having that information, or at least knowing the partners that we would connect you with. We would like to provide year-round and pop-up services in an accessible location and serve as a referral point for services, serve as a gathering place for community members and visitors. And that would only, I think, provide more community connectiveness and inclusion. So a lot of this comes from our community partners as well. And I've been in contact with several to see what they think that would look like. And we've had a lot of really positive response. So that is a big plan for that property over on Gable Road, is to provide a community wellness hub that's not only just activities like sports and arts, but it also could be some place that maybe somebody comes in and needs some food, and food bank has a pop-up there, like on Wednesdays or something, or maybe they need a referral for another service that we have a community partner in on those days. So partnerships, sponsorships, and volunteers are something that I've been really working hard on this year to create some really transparent ways that people can partner with us, what kind of sponsorships we need, and for volunteers to know when they come in, they know exactly what their duty is and have the tools to help them do those things, because our volunteers are a huge part of our program for both parks and recreation. We're starting a new youth leadership program, which is kind of a pivot off of the youth council that we had talked about. So that one will start, it will be the third Friday of each month. And there'll be more opportunities to start doing more days too as we get more activities. This will be a program that is very much led by the kids and for the kids. I'll be here as a point of contact and somebody that can help with if we need certain insurances or waivers and stuff, but I really want the kids to take ownership of this and be able to go out into our community and create those safe spaces and places for everyone. A new opportunity for our instructors. So, and I know we have some folks here on this Zoom that have taught classes for us, and that's a really great way to get involved in the community and also learn new things from people who are the experts on it. And then I already touched on the Streamline volunteer program. So if you want to go to the next slide. So our goals for 2021 is to build stronger partnerships with local organizations, look at feasibility of hosting tournaments like basketball, soccer, softball, etc. There's quite a few on there, and creating diverse programs for all interests. Sometimes we just do what we feel most comfortable with. And, I'm totally a sports girl. You don't want me teaching art classes, but finding those experts that do the art classes is important so that everybody feels like they belong and have some sort of outlet that they can do. For St. Helens Recreation Youth Sports, we're going to continue with our youth soccer. We're going to return our basketball program. And I've been in contact with several partners on creating some sort of youth disc golf program, which is exciting, especially the facility that we have over at McCormick Park is amazing, and it'll be fun to get the youth playing. Adult sports, kickball, volleyball, some slow pitch, Sunday afternoon softball and cornhole are a few that have been at the top of the list that people want to see out here, and wouldn't be much to start those things. So we go ahead and go to the next one. So yeah, so that's it for me. I was just going to keep it short and sweet today, but I'm more than willing to answer any questions. If you have any comments, any of those things, I would love to hear them. If you have more questions about the grants that we've gotten, what those are being used for, and how we would, how we're going forward with those, my phone's always available and my door is always open for those kind of questions. So thank you.
Okay, I'm looking to see if there's any counselors that have any comments.
I have one. On your grants, do you have a catalog of possible grants from even outside the state, or you just kind of go and try to see what you can get?
So I do not have a catalog. I am a total researcher by nature. So a lot of times in the evenings, you'll see me researching what sort of things are out there. I do have a few connections that forward things over to me if they think that it's applicable to this business.
I was hoping the university's athletic programs and some of those might be help to you. That was the question where it was aimed.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I have tried to reach out, and I also forward grants that I see that other people might be interested, but I do have a pretty good network that forwards over opportunities as well.
Good.
Shauna, could you speak a little bit to the partnership with the schools and maybe what the future looks like with that?
Yeah, thank you. So our partnership with the schools, so what that looks like is we are able to use any facilities for no cost. Our partnership in that is that we provide our rec staff to make sure that we're, cleaning up after ourselves and making sure the school stays safe and what it's intended to be used for. And the flip side of that is that, we provide the services while we're there. So for instance, at Lewis and Clark, we actually have a whole portable over there that we host our after school program out of. And Scott and I talk probably, I don't know, not quite daily, but pretty close to. It seems like we're in a lot of the same groups, and talk about ways that we can strengthen those partnerships, as well as, utilize each other's staff members and also resources. And Scott is here if he wants to just chime in just real quick, if there was anything I missed on there about our partnership that we have, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, Scott.
No, I don't mind. I think we've got a really strong partnership. And yeah, Shauna, I don't mind visiting with you on a daily basis, because I think each time we chat, we come up with maybe something even a little bit more exciting. And an example of that would be, as a school district, we're putting together a family resource center, and we've identified that we need to have a person that's at our front desk that speaks Spanish. And in conversation with Shauna, when she shared with me the resource center, I'm sorry, I just watched the video. I think it's fantastic. But what's the proper name for that, Shauna?
The Community Wellness Hub is what.
Community Wellness Hub. We've talked about ways that we can partner together, and maybe even sharing that person, because we know there's a need for Spanish language and a receptionist at that wellness center as well. So lots of conversations that really in the long run benefit our community, because the more we can partner and share resources, the more we can do. So I think it's exciting that Shauna and the council is forward thinking with this type of a partnership.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, if I could follow up too on what Scott was saying concerning the and Shauna, thank you for that video about the wellness hub. It actually reminds me about when Lewis and Clark was built, and the one portion of Condon Elementary that was saved is now the Sacagawea Center, the health center. But in the first couple of years after the school was built, that was had a similar model as a one-stop shop for community resources. So I'm excited that you have the broader vision of the Parks and Recreation program. It's not just being for fun and activities, but something that's essential to the health and well-being of our whole community. So I'm excited about the new facility being part of that, but then also, cooperating with the school district, and the potential of sharing resources with personnel as well, so that we have that kind of seamless integration. I think also it's kind of nice. I don't, Scott, is with the location of your family resource centers at near the administration offices.
Yeah, it's the former CCEC.
Yeah. Okay.
All
right.
Portables that we have out there.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I think it's also nice to have maybe two places on separate sides of the highway. Maybe might help accessibility and things. Just one other thing though, and congratulations, Shauna, on your new title and new role. And it's evident that I think one of the reasons you were hired for this is just all the enthusiasm and your ability to research and find different ways of building programs. Well, one thing I did want to comment on is kind of maybe peripheral is I think you're well positioned to lead the new youth leadership team. But my comment about this, I was participated in the council discussions last year about whether or not the youth council, as it once was, should continue to exist, or whether we should go to a new model. And it seems that the decision was made to go with this youth leadership team. But I also believe that it doesn't need to be an either or. I think that and you can correct me, Mayor, I don't believe that the council has yet taken steps to actually eliminate the youth council from the city code or city instruction or city structure. But I would like to continue or have some further conversation about reconstituting the youth council and seeing it and having it not an either or, the youth leadership program, which it sounds like Shauna's development, having them really engaged in developing activities for students. Whereas I'm understanding the youth council would be more along the lines of providing input to the city council about council issues and affairs, and maybe even having a place at the table at our meetings where we did have somebody from the youth council who was participating. And I know there's several models of that available here in St. Helens. So I really encourage Shauna's development of this new youth leadership, but I'd like Mayor to in the future to find a spot for the council to talk about the youth council as such, and how we can maybe reconstitute that, but with maybe a different focus than it might have had in the past. Anyway, Shauna, great work, and thank you.
No, I totally agree with you, Patrick. I mean, yes, we'll have that discussion.
Yeah, on
Thank
that,
you.
Mayor,
Sorry, good.
Yeah, go ahead, Council President Morton.
on that note, one of the things that, one of the issues that we had with the youth council was we encouraged the youth council to get to participate in our committees and commissions, especially the library committee and that commission, arts and culture, and parks. And if we get people, if kids involved in those kinds of meetings, as well as our city council meetings, they're less long drawn out. They're more kind of focused into one direction, which I think is really helpful for teenagers. And it seems to me like it would be more effective all the way around. And I really enjoyed it when any of the youth council showed up at our Parks Commission meetings, and it was very fruitful for me, and our commission enjoyed that as well. So anyway, I just wanted to put that note in. Okay, thanks.
Okay, Shauna, we're going to chime in, or?
Oh, I was just going to say, I totally agree with that. I think by having this new youth leadership club, we can build that foundation to kind of see what their interests are. And there's just so many different ways that we can go with it. And I think that that is something that will be great for the future, is building that foundation and seeing what their interests are. So if it is in more the government side, we can, be a liaison to help that happen. Or if it's more, volunteer side, that sort of thing. So a place and space for everyone. And also, I think it's so important for them to be part of the decision making, or, because who knows the youth better than the youth? I know I don't. My kids tell me that whatever I say, but I think it is. So, and just getting that. So I totally agree. I don't ever want to say that there will never be another youth council or anything like that. I think that there just needs to be a little bit of the foundation laid and then some layers in that. And I think we're well positioned to do that.
Yep. All right. I would like to reiterate what Councilor Berkeley said. Congratulations on your new position, Shauna. And thank you for all the hard work you do.
Thank you. I love being a part of this community and this city, and I appreciate you all as well.
Good work. Thank you. Okay, we will go on to our next item on the agenda, which is McKinsey Architecture Public Safety Facility Report. Now I'll turn it over to Matt.
Yep, I'm just going to quickly introduce Jeff and Adam from McKinsey Architecture. They're going to be starting their videos and getting online. There's Jeff with his Star Wars background.
I'll change that.
That's okay. That's good. Let's see. Let me get Adam on here.
Thank you.
And Jeff, you should be, you are a co-host now, so you should be able to share your screen.
Oh, can we have Adam be our
Or Adam,
co-host?
sorry. Yep,
Oh,
sorry. Easy fix. Okay, Adam, you should have co-hosting ability there.
Alrighty, I'll go ahead and load it up. Everybody see that okay?
Looks like it. All right. Mayor, councilors, staff, thank you so much for having us today. My name is Jeff Humphreys. I'm the Director of Architecture and one of the principals at McKinsey. And with me today is Adam Olson, who is one of our architects and the project manager for your project. Before we get started, I wanted to give you just a little bit of a background on us at McKinsey. So McKinsey is an integrated design firm. We've been around for 61 years, founded in Portland, Oregon. I joined McKinsey a little over 25 years ago, and I've dedicated my entire career to the assessment of essential facilities, particularly police and fire facilities. And I lead a team of architects and engineers, Adam being one of those people. Collectively, we've designed over 80 fire stations and 35 policing facilities. And we're bringing that experience to the city of St. Helens and St. Helens PD. And we're going to walk you through a really high level of the tasks that we were charged with for developing a needs assessment for your PD. So if you go to the next slide here, Adam. So one of the first things associated with developing a needs assessment is defining how big is it? What does the thing look like? And how much does it cost? So you have to start at how big is it? What are the operational needs associated with a facility, a police facility? So we met with key staff and went through a series of questionnaires, interviewed them, and developed a program, which ultimately was a spreadsheet that itemizes out all the individual rooms, the staffing projections, and the target that we were looking for was 20 plus years. So the table that you see in front of you is kind of a summary of the findings that we went through when we concluded our programming efforts. And I'll just highlight that what we've labeled here as the high square footage option. that Adam's pointing to there. That is the needs for the 20+ scenario, the 20-year plus scenario. That meets all the operational requirements of the police department for the growing needs. But we were also tasked with, if we had to reduce the square footage so that we could have some growth, but not quite be at the full meal deal, if you will, what would that entail? And so you can see we have a column for a mid square footage and a low square footage. And then these are itemized out on the far left column there, Adam. I guess we have 4 major programmatic pieces. We've got the lobby and public areas, the police operations. We've got a kind of back of house, which is interview, which include the evidence and interview areas, and then the facility support. So that's the things that are required associated with the building, the mechanical systems, the toilet rooms, those sorts of things. So that was the first task that we went through. And if we move to the next slide, after we complete the programming effort, the next thing that we do is we recommend going through and touring recently completed facilities. And the objective there is to look at adjacencies between the spaces, look at how materials are holding up, the durability of the chosen systems, and also at the conclusion of that tour, reflect back on the program and see if there are anything that challenges or reconfirms what was developed through that programming effort. So that's what we actually did with St. Helens PD. We toured 3 different facilities there. So there was Lebanon, there was Westland, and Sherwood were the 3 that were identified as being close in size and as far as facility and size of department goes. Also associated with this is once we have that program kind of dialed in, looking at, because we do a number of different policing facilities, whether they're ours or we're keeping tabs on other ones that have been recently completed, to take that metric and look at other facilities. So this is here is a table in yellow. You can see this is square footage that was identified as being required for St. Helens PD. You can see the total population, the city size, the how big the building is, police department square foot size, and then the officer count. And then over on the far right, it shows you square footage per officer. And then that metric goes down. You can see all these other jurisdictions that we're looking at. And so right now what we're seeing is the projected needs are about 650 square feet. And the average of these different facilities here, and there's I think 13 or 14 of them, are about 630 square feet. There's some that are on their higher side, about 1,000 square feet. There's some that are on the lower side, about 400 square feet. So what this is showing is that St. Helens is being very frugal, and they're building a facility or planning a facility that is in the range of the average of what we actually see. Not a Taj Mahal and not a shed. Next slide.
So after the team finished the program development, toured 3 comparable facilities, the team evaluated 4 different sites. And site test fits were done on 3 of those sites to evaluate whether or not the overall program could ultimately fit on the different sites. So these are kind of the maps of the locations. Then the first site, this one's located along Columbia Boulevard between 17th and 18th Street, just down the way a little bit from the existing police facility. And it's a full city block, and the site is prominent, but it's not currently owned by the city. There's an existing sanitary sewer easement that will need to be dealt with that runs, essentially through the middle of the site. And even though it was a full city block, was a little bit short on the amount of secured vehicle parking that was required for that 20-year plus projection, that feedback that we got from the police department. So that's site number 1. And then the second site was the existing police station site with some expansion to some adjacent parcels. It's along Columbia and between 12th and 13th Street. And this is obviously a city-owned site, but the project would need to be phased to allow police operations to continue during construction, and that could be a bit difficult and costly, depending on whether police maybe are relocated to a temporary facility, or depending on what was the strategy that was come up with to phase the building. So that was a bit of a challenge on site number 2. And then the site number 3 was the site located at Old Portland Road and Castor Road. And the site did have some challenges related to floodplains and wetlands, but it is a city-owned site, and the entire police program can fit on the site, which is obviously an important piece of the puzzle, which allows for that 20-year plus future growth. And then another big aspect of this site was that it gave police better access to Highway 30, so to help with response times. And then after we had done the 3 site test fits, we did add an additional site number 4 on Oregon Street to the mix, and evaluated that. And what we did as a part of this process is we ranked the sites 1 through 4 against each other. And number 1 was least suited, and 4 was the best suited. So they were ranked the categories that we had identified. We had 18 different categories. They didn't have any special kind of weighting towards any of the specific categories, but after we had gone through the process of scoring each of the sites, we ended up passing that information back to Matt and the team, and there was I believe a council presentation update that was done back in February of last year, and it was decided after a number of different factors to proceed with the Old Portland Road. So after the Old Portland Road site was chosen, but before the team really got further into the conceptual design process, the team worked through what the building wanted to ultimately look and feel like. We identified other police and civic structures for inspiration, and the team rated them using green dots and red dots, the green dots representing what team members liked in terms of aspects or qualities of those particular structures, and the red dots indicating attributes that people didn't really care for. And so then what we did is McKinsey then took the building attributes from the images with the most green dots and utilized that when we got into conceptual design, which is in task 4. So I'll hand it over to Jeff here, and he can talk a little bit about what we did in conceptual concept development.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So after this site was identified, we went through and moving from the test fit, we explored 3 different scenarios of how the building could be oriented best on the site, looking at orienting the primary direction on Old Portland versus Castor versus the actual intersection. And here you can see in this at this site, we're showing the future roundabout that's being planned there. When we went through those 3 scenarios I just described, this is the one that was selected by the PD and city staff as being most appropriate. So the long direction of the building is actually oriented on Castor Road. The blue field you see there is the footprint of the building, and the parking to the between Castor and that blue field is the public parking. The parking that is on the top or to the right side of the slide, that's the secure parking. There's a primary entrance for public parking just off of Castor Road, off of a new right-of-way or new road that's actually going to be developed there on the east side. And then there's 2 different means of ingress and egress out of the secure parking, one off that same location for the new road, and then a secondary means where Adam is pointing to there. So that's what we're showing. We're also showing plaza area. You can actually see a possible circulation area that could be kind of a dual purpose. It could be secondary means for egress, as well as that plaza piece for different purposes. So, so this was the resulting site diagram that came into play. I'll also kind of share that you kind of see the building has a little bit of a U shape, and there's a keynote number 6 there in the middle. That's actually covered parking, so that we have a number of patrol cars there that are actually covered, keep the dew, the rain, and different elements off of the patrol cars. So that's the site diagram. Once the site was fairly well dialed in on how we wanted to locate things, we started looking at adjacencies of the building. And this is the result of what came out of those adjacencies and then refining a floor plan. And so I'll just give you a super high level. I think this is already in your packet. The light blue are areas that the public we either have access to or would interface. And so keynote number one is the entry into the building. You come into the lobby. Off to the left side is a multi-purpose room. So that is City Council. It is a community room. Sorry, Adam, the other way. There you go. And it's also court. So an EOC. So 3 different functions there that actually can be, and there's support rooms on the back side of that for serving as a court function. And then going back to the lobby, Adam, immediately straight ahead when you come in the building is records. So that's the keynote number 10 there, so that have eyes onto people coming into the building and vice versa. And then keynote number 21 is a dedicated training room, which also could be accessed by the public or PD. The other colors, the purple, the gray, the orange, and the green, those are all secure portions of the building. Those are all police proper. So that's their office space for report writing, debriefing. The gray areas are all those functional support rooms that we talked about, some mechanical rooms and electrical server room, those sorts of things. So that's the gist of how the floor plan lays out. And if we go to the next slide here, after we had the floor plan pretty well dialed in, we reflected back on that visioning exercise that Adam described to you. And we went through a series of different options. I think that there were 3, maybe 4 that we went through. We asked PD and staff to actually select the one that they thought was most appropriate. This is the image that was deemed as being most appropriate. What we were trying to invoke was a building that resonated with the community. It brought in aspects of the Pacific Northwest. So we had these large overhangs, we have wood. We also wanted to bring in durability. So we're proposing that the exterior of the building is actually made out of masonry. We also have Columbia River basalt, which is the base that you see along the building, as well as some of the planters that Adam is actually pointing to there. And so those are kind of some of the compositional elements there. You can kind of see the earth tones kind of on the darker element. And so that was the basis of how we actually established the exterior scheme. Once we provided the initial concept behind it, we received feedback from PD and staff and made refinements associated with that. And that put us in a position to answer that last question. And that was, well, how much does this cost?
Yes, and so after city staff and police department approved the concept design, the design team took a deep dive and did a detailed cost estimate for the project. Let me zoom in just a little bit here. And the information that came back from our cost estimator that we worked with is that information got inserted into the blue section here at the top. And this includes your on and off-site hard costs, your building hard costs, as well as your contractor markups and margins. And we also did include in this list an amount to escalate the project to spring of 2022, and that's when we approximately think that the project would be going out for bid. So that's the blue cost being more of the hard cost, and then the green section and the orange section being more soft costs. The green section is related to the consultant costs that are anticipated on the project. And then the bottom owner costs are, that's what's in orange down there, are comments and feedback that we typically see on public projects, and the line items that are in red there are the ones that we had city staff help us with validating a bit, and that's more related to things like furniture and lockers and telephones and relocation fees, permit fees, those sort of items. Let me zoom in just a little bit more. So the high option was estimated at approximately $18.5 million. And this is inclusive of all the programmatic needs that Jeff was mentioning at the beginning of the project, the high option that would meet all the needs for the police for the next 20 plus years. And then we also did do this left column here. There was kind of two columns, the right column being the high option and the left column being the mid option here. And the mid option was estimated at approximately $17 million. And this option, it wouldn't give police the full 20 years of growth, may require some level of remodel or expansion in the future, maybe before that 20-year period is up. So that's just a high level review of the project costing exercise that we went through on the project. I'll hand it over here to Jeff to talk about a little bit about the next steps.
Yeah, so I'll just one last thing on the construction or the cost that we have there. The intent there is that is the all-in cost for the project, and so we've classified those in 3 categories that Adam described. And I'll just add in the owner cost that includes your permit fees, your furniture, all the different systems that are actually going to be put in the building that the contractor will not necessarily be responsible for. So the intent there is to capture everything that's being forecast, not just the construction cost. And then the next steps on the project are establishing the project timeline and budget. Those have been forecasted. It's basically confirming the direction that you guys want to go on that. And then related to that would be confirming the funding strategy, which I believe you're going to be talking about that later. And then because of some of the challenges associated with the selected site, which includes the 100-year and the 500-year floodplain, hiring the hydrologist, West Consultants, to be able to further delineate so that we might be able to afford additional savings from what we're currently planning. And I believe that that contract is something that you'll be talking about later today as well. And then our other recommendation would be, regardless of funding strategy, keeping the community engaged and having that public outreach through your ad hoc committee is something that we think is definitely worthwhile to continue with. So with that, I think we're going to turn it over to questions.
We just speak up or what?
Yep. Go ahead, Councilor Koufax.
I have a tendency to think a little bit further down the road, and I'd like to be the first in the group, not an average in the group. One of the questions, at the end of 20 years, I want to make a major revision of the building. Is this building designed so I can repair it, revise it, or do I basically have to start over? That's the first question. Second question is, all of a sudden we're having a lot of digital information. A lot of homes have surveillance cameras and so on. Is there any spot in this facility that would allow us to use the digital information that's presently available in the homes and on the web, especially if there's robberies and the products are showing up instantly on the web? Do we have a cyber crime unit space in this building?
Fantastic questions, Councillor. So I'll take the first one. So the projection that we are showing for the size of the building and the staff count is 20. The design of the building has been made in such a way that in reality, this is a 50-year plus building. Most of the growth that you will see will actually probably be in patrol. And the patrol officers, they don't have dedicated workstations. They share workstations. Their workstation is their patrol car. So that's where most of the growth is actually going to occur, which won't substantiate the need to actually expand the building. The building is being sized so that when the department moves in and continues to grow, they will actually fill in the space that's actually there. So that's a couple of things that I wanted to highlight. And then at some point, the model potentially could change. If you do get to the point 40 years from now and you're really busting at the seams and this facility is starting to be taxed, it could be added on to. Another strategy would be that you could potentially move to community policing, whether that's a precinct or substations or those sorts of things. And so I'd like to queue up the chief who might be able to talk about that. And I think that he's probably the most appropriate person to talk about the surveillance that you asked about.
Thanks, Jeff. So, Counselor, I can speak to this with authority that what we have now absolutely would not support the infrastructure for any type of digital camera facility. I came from an agency that we relied on cameras and they were piped in from both businesses and residentials, from Ring doorbells to surveillance cameras and 7-Elevens that were monitored 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to include up and down a tourist corridor. So yes, that's the type of thinking that we need as leaders of this city to start thinking about. So to put that in our current facility, absolutely not. It won't happen. But a bigger facility like the proposed one in front of you, yes, we could carve out space to have a certain room for audio visual recordings that we could, have a Operation Safe Cam or whatever we want to deem and identify that we would have the ability to have that footage piped directly into the police department that can be monitored 24/7. I will tell you that if that's on the horizon, then I would absolutely opt for the high end to ensure that we have the space to be able to accommodate that down the road. Now, will we be able to accommodate it on day one that we open? No, we can't, because we don't have the personnel. But that's the type of thinking that our forefathers failed to put in their mindset in 1971 when they started thinking that, hey, our town's only going to be 6,200 people. It won't grow very much. We're a logging community. And we can't think like that now. We have to think 20, 30, 40 years down the road. So yes, that is a great question. And that is something that future members of our agency and our city have to start thinking on. Technology is growing. It is no secret that the technology grows at 2 times faster than what governments can keep up with. We get an Apple iPhone 7 today, and tomorrow they're putting an Apple iPhone 12 on the market, if that makes sense. So hopefully that answered your questions. We don't need a specialty room built in this for specific, camera, watching cameras or audio visual. However, we do need the infrastructure to be able to put that in a certain space within our new facility.
I have one other question in newness. We have this big push for green. Are there going to be a whole bunch of charging stations for the electrically powered patrol cars that will get, quote, in the future?
That's a good question too. And this will be a 2-parter. I'll do the start, and then Adam can give you the quantity here. But I want to share with you that the objective here is that this project would be very sustainable. We developed a narrative in addition to those drawings that we showed you for our cost estimator to be able to do takeoffs off of. The project will meet the latest energy code, which, if people are interested in LEED as an example, as a metric, the project would be able to hit silver, perhaps gold, in that range. And that's just because the state of Oregon is very progressive with their energy code. Whether or not you decide to actually go through the certification process, that's the level of the performance of the building that it would actually have. In addition, the state of Oregon actually requires that all public facilities spend 1.5% of the total construction value toward green technology. And so what is proposed on your project is 1.5% of the construction costs would have photovoltaic panels lined on the roofs to provide power generation to offset some of the demand that the building would actually have. And then I do believe that we do have charging stations to answer your specific question about that. And Adam, I have to tell you how many we had quantified, but I think that there was a handful or so.
Yeah, I was just looking through the program as you were talking there, Jeff, and I'm not finding it right off the top of my head. I lean towards that we did not account for electric stalls. The high option has, I guess I should say, the old Portland Road, Pastor Road option does have room for 52 secured parking spots. So those could very, very easily be, it could be adapted to insert as many of those stalls and, and expand those over the course of that secured lot as needed.
Councilor Topaz, particularly the ones that are under the carport, their building is right there. So the infrastructure to kind of feed through the wall and have a connection point would be really easy. And I think we have 9 stalls that are actually under that carport there.
just make sure your transformers outside the building are heavy enough to power that, because those charging stations suck up a lot of power.
Yeah, I'll
They'll
bet.
suck up at times as much as the building.
Would you mind, could you guys speak to the safety features, not just for the police officers in the building, but the safety features that would be available to citizens?
Sure. Adam, do you want to pull up maybe the, let's see, I'm going to say floor plan.
Yeah, let me- There we go.
Okay, so as Adam zooms into it, so one of the things that we commonly have done in our policing facilities is we'll have a lockdown vestibule. So keynote number one there is a vestibule. It's a dual purpose vestibule. So one, it provides for environmental separation. So if the outside door is open, you're not going to get that gust of wind or lose your conditioned air that you have inside the building. In addition to that, that also will have a lockdown feature. It's again, this is commonly done at policing facilities, so that if somebody was trying to, get away from a significant other because they were trying to beat them up or that sort of thing, they could come to this vestibule, and when they go in there, there's a panic button. All you have to do is hit that button. It locks the outside doors, so to prevent the person that's chasing them from being able to gain access into that. There's also a call button there, and so they can hit that, and that will take them to dispatch. So we'll allow a officer to either come from inside the building if they're there, or if it's after hours, they would actually be dispatched from wherever they're at, actually on patrol. So that's a common feature that we actually see on our buildings. Moving beyond that is features that are common for the officers or as well as anybody that is inside the building. We do have, because sometimes these buildings unfortunately can become targets. So can you toggle back to the perspective, Adam? So you can see there's a number of planters and some bollards and things here. And so the bollards may be more obvious that those are vehicle deterrents, but those planters that you can actually see there, those are an architectural expression to actually provide a not only a visual separation, but a vehicle deterrent, so that a vehicle could not try to, well, it could try, but it's not going to make it through that planter into the glass that you see. And the glass, it's right where Adam is Adam, you're going to point to the courtroom. So the predominant glass area there where that court area is. And then off to the left side, same thing. We've got a planter area. There's a breakout space with some doors there, again, creating some level of flexibility from that, from the court, council, and community room function. In addition, all the glass that you see in this facing the public is all treated with a film, and it's a projectile resistant film. It's called Blast Guard. So that keeps the glass from being disintegrated into shards and falling down onto people. And then some of the more hardened portions of the station actually have bullet resistant glazing in it. You heard me talk a little bit about the choice of materials with the masonry. Those are also chosen because of their durability against not only just the weather, but also against projectiles. So those are some of the features on the perimeter of the building.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other questions? I have a question, and it's kind of a unique one. Your pricing, you guys have, you're pricing this on basically your experience with fire stations and other police stations that you built, correct?
Yes. And so
Okay.
it's based, Mayor, that's based on current market conditions. Like we just had a facility that just bid here last week.
So my question is, a private guy could come in and build that same building for $10 million. And so my question being is that we are in an opportunity zone. Would it behoove the city to have a private builder build this us lease it for 10 years, because the way opportunity zones work, you get a tax break after 10 years of your initial investment. Even if we save $2 million and they spent 11 building it and we spent 17 buying, we're still saving $2 million. So that would be my question. Have you ever experienced anything like this where it falls in an opportunity zone where the city could potentially lease it for 10 years and then have with an agreement of purchasing it in 10 years from now?
We have not developed a project that went through that model. We are familiar with that. I would share with you that prevailing wage is the challenge that you'll still have to meet against. So even a private developer is still going to have to deal with prevailing wage. That drives all the labor that's going to be on the project. So the delta that you just described is probably not going to be as significant as you're saying. It's not going to go from 17 to 10. It's gonna drop by some percentage, but it won't be that dramatic.
$810 a square foot, I think, is what you quoted.
Adam, do you have that cost information to pull up there?
Yeah, it is 810, but that's the all-in, which includes the soft costs.
Yeah. So I would at least welcome the idea and get some bids to see, is what I guess I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And even if the loopholes are there, I imagine, I would rather see, even if we could save $500,000, still $500,000. I mean, we have to look at every aspect of trying to keep this cost down as much as we can to be held accountable to our citizens.
Rick, I have a question, and it's totally fog right now. Right now, down in Washington, D.C., they're getting ready to throw money at everything. Is there a possibility that somehow we could get our basket out for the police station? Because through regular channels, we can't right now. But what's happening in the next couple of months? Do we have any idea about whether public buildings will be in this money
that's
throw
the other, that's a good question. That's the other side of it, is if we held control of it and built, we also could continue to reach out for grants and maybe save money that way as well.
Mr. Mayor,
So-
I'm not understanding, how could the city lease its own property? Because we own that property, correct?
Yeah, we can lease it. We could
For
actually,
help?
we could, yes, Jessica, we could sell the property for $1 with the understanding too that we are going to lease it and purchase it in 10 years from now.
Okay.
It's very simple. It really is. Yes, it's definitely an option.
Yeah, Mayor, I was just going to comment that the selection process for a developer would still have to go through the same kind of process. You'll have to go through an RFP process through it. There are developers out there that do that sort of thing, and sometimes it's they bring the whole team, right? So they bring your designer, your builder, and then there's a financial aspect associated with that they're handling. And there could be different ways that you actually structure that. You could say, well, we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that we're maintaining control over the design and the quality that we're looking for, but we want somebody to actually build once it's designed. So either way, that'd still be a selection process that the city would want to go through.
Yeah, but it is doable, is what I guess what I'm saying. And being in the opportunity zone, we have that's what it's created for, is for investors to walk away with a little bit of money tax-free. And I'm just going to throw, that there's a name out there that I actually talked to Patrick Kessy a little bit, and he's getting into building these types of buildings. He's moved from development to this. And in an opportunity zone, he said, yeah, why wouldn't I bid on it if you guys put it out for proposal? If it's in an opportunity zone, and I know that I'm getting my hard cost and the purchase price, if it pans out, that's guaranteed money in 10 years from now. So I just throwing that out there. $500,000 is huge. $2 million is even bigger. It's just one option of many that we're probably going to be looking at. Any other questions for these guys? Well, we got them here. So I'd just like to know a little bit of your guys' history. What other police stations? You said, I think 18. Is that correct? 18 police stations?
We've been engaged in 35 different policing facilities.
35. Okay.
Yeah. Some of the more recent ones, like right now, we're currently working on St. Helens, sorry, not St. Helens, Silverton, starts with an S.
Yeah.
Silverton, we're doing a city hall and a PD for them. It's a combined facility. Originally, it was going to be a separate police and separate city hall, but now we showed them that it was actually more cost effective to do one structure. We're also currently working with Linwood. They're doing a city hall and PD, and that is starting construction here in the next month or so. And we're currently working with the city of Puyallup on a justice facility, which includes court and corrections, as well as the law enforcement piece. So those are our current projects that we have underway. Let's see. And so other projects that we've completed, I think that the most recent one that I could share with you is a 3,000 square foot policing facility for the city of Kalama. And so that one was just completed here a few years ago. Adam and I worked on that one together. You may be familiar with the City of Kaiser Police and Civic Center. That was one of our projects. Woodburn Police, Tualatin Police, West Lynn.
Okay, yeah. That's enough.
Okay,
So,
all right. Okay.
So what my question would be, my final question would be this: on a scale of 1 to 10, you've seen our current police station.
Mhm.
And you've looked at all these other facilities, obviously, what they have and what you drew up for them. Where do we sit on worst, 1 to 10?
Wow, I feel like I'm going to offend somebody if I say how bad.
Well, you guys have obviously had a little bit of history in this type of stuff, so that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, well, your facility is very lacking. Honestly, one of the things that we find is there's a step of just getting the PD to what they need, not even including getting out to what they need in the future, right? And right now they're already operating out of something that doesn't meet their needs. They've exceeded it.
Yeah.
I honestly feel as though the public would be very horrified if they knew the conditions that police officers had to work in. And so, depending that ad hoc committee and keeping the community engaged, sometimes the behind the scenes tours and giving people the opportunity to see the conditions that the officers have to work in is kind of a big deal. And I know that the challenge that we have with all these other communities that have recently developed police facilities is recruitment's also a thing, right? It's not just being able to do your job, but it's like, who wants to work there, right? So if you're competing with the city of Beaverton or Oregon City, these guys have brand new facilities, and it's like somebody trying to choose the sports team that they're wanting to join, right? They're going to look at what the job entails and what the conditions are actually going to be like. And that's something that just really needs to be thought of.
Mm-hmm. You have a future in politics because you never answered my question.
I'm not trying to. I'm not trying to not answer your question. It's pretty. I don't know that I've actually ranked one on a scale of 1 to 10 before, but it's like, I don't know. I'd say it's probably like a 5. You guys are. It's not very good.
Yeah. Okay.
Mayor, it's like it's this. It's like they don't. I'm trying to show my fingers. I don't know if they're going to show up, but it's like you don't meet the operational requirements. That's one thing. You don't meet energy code requirements. It doesn't meet accessibility requirements. The building would fall down in a seismic event of the right size. So all these things are things that just don't give the community of St. Helens the resiliency that you guys are really needing.
Okay. Now I'll accept that answer. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
A question on facilities, and this is overall of them. Are there any police facilities where they have sleeping quarters? And I bring this up with some of the street actions we've seen, it looks like some of the police ought to be pulled off duty to get some rest, because working 18 hours at a run is not a good thing. Is there any thoughts about having sleeping quarters, even though they're temporary in this building, or was that not even considered?
Councilor Topaz, very insightful of you. I just glossed over, I didn't tell you the names of the rooms that are actually in there, but we have two things. Number one, the state of Oregon requires that we have a wellness room. So that's aimed at addressing nursing mothers. In addition to that, we think it's good practice, as you're describing, to have what we would call a bunk room. So in your guys' facility, we have a dual purpose room that could be used for either of those functions. And I think we have one that's actually included in there now for that very reason. It's like, you just don't know. You got the long shift that you're pulling, or you're a mom. And so we have a dedicated room for either of those uses.
Good, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Okay, we'll let the presentation go on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys for your time.
Yep. Okay, so now we'll go into the public safety facility staff presentation.
And Mayor, just give me a couple seconds to get everybody on, because there are several people that are presenting.
Yep.
Let's see, Chief. Let's see.
Somebody's getting a fax.
Matt, you want me to kick this off?
Yes, I think we are ready, Chief. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so we're ready. So we're going to break it up. I'm going to speak first about our timeline, and then turn over to Crystal and then Matt, and then I believe Chris Iverson's going to speak. So no secret, in front of you, you see our current police station, 150 South 13th Street. I think we've kind of beaten it up of its current condition. So we're just going to roll into the timeline. So believe it or not, it just kind of struck me today. We've been on this path for 2 years now. We started this in March of 2019, and I would say time flies, but it's when I was talking with Matt, I was like, wow, 2 years already. So just kind of cover this in brief as a refresher. We started in March of 2019, discussions. We moved to City Council talking about where we can put a new proposed public safety facility. In November of 2019, we selected and confirmed it with City Council on where it's going to go. Fast forward almost a year into September of last year, 2020, we created an ad hoc committee, that was approved by City Council. And then we rolled right into October, where we began meeting with the ad hoc committee. The committee was composed of 20 plus community residents and business owners who met to discuss the facility, discuss possible funding mechanisms, and made those recommendations to council. One thing that of note on our ad hoc committee, that everyone who applied was selected to sit on the committee. So there was nobody turned away. In January, the ad hoc committee made recommendations to City Council, which City Council adopted. And you can see those recommendations in front of you, which take effect tonight in the regular council meeting. We began our public engagement session in February at the direction of City Council. And Crystal will speak more to this, but I want to say we're either 30 or 30 plus public engagement meetings that Matt, myself, police department members, City Council have attended. And we have both done public engagement and community groups to kind of message out the proposed public safety facility, taking feedback, both positive and negative, and then encouraging everybody who attended to reach out to our elected officials, whether they supported it or were against it. So our next slide, I'm going to turn over to Crystal, is going to touch on how we did the community engagement, what steps we took.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Great. First time I'm using this. So we have, after the ad hoc committee met and made their recommendation to the city council, we also had a polling of the community. And from those results, we gathered all the feedback and we had several staff communications meetings to determine how we were going to message out this project to the community. One of the first things that we did was we created a dedicated project website on the city's main page. It includes everything from an overview of the project, a history of the station, current deficiencies, what happened during the ad hoc committee process, community engagement information, all the videos that we created, and a pretty robust frequently asked questions section. We initially had that microsite placed as a banner on the website, which we decided was not the best way to attract people's attention to find the project information as easily as possible. So we went to the company that hosts our website, and we actually had them create a custom homepage button on our website. So when you now go to our website, there's custom coding, so you can click right on the main page in a big button, Public Safety Facility Project. So it's really easy for people to find it. We will be using that in the future as we want to highlight other projects like the riverfront development once we're completed with the Public Safety Facility Project. We created an informational flyer that was two-sided that includes an overview of the project as well as a station deficiencies, community engagement listings, and it creates a link back to the project website. That flyer was distributed at Habitat Restore, the food cart pod in town, Skinny and Chubb's gas station, Sunshine Pizza, Mailboxes Northwest, US Post Office, Red Apple, Molly's Market, Running Dogs Brewery, 2C's Vendor Mall, Columbia Theater, the rec program, and the library. We took out a 3/4 page ad in the Chronicle. It looked just like a news article would, except for we paid for it. It included pictures and I think it was about a 1,200 word write-up on the project. Again, all this stuff directing people back to our website for more information about the project. We hosted 15 virtual Zoom and Facebook Live meetings. Initially, we had hoped to hold several in-person meetings. COVID rules were changed at the state level almost as soon as we got scheduling together for the community meetings. So we had to turn those virtual early on in the process until recent updates in which we were allowed to have an in-person community meeting finally, which was scheduled for yesterday, April 6th. I think several of you attended it. It was at the St. Helens Middle School. We created ticketed events for police station tours. So we invited people to schedule a tour of the station so that they could see what the current conditions were there. We had 6 specific times that we gave people to sign up for. And we also had standing invitations to tour the facility. And that was included on the community engagement section of the website where people could click on there to email us if they wanted to set up a private tour of the station. We also reached out to the Spotlight and Chronicle and asked them if they'd like to do separate media tours of the police station. They both were interested, and we toured the station separately for both of them. We garnered, which we haven't included here because we're focused here on what staff have done, but from those station tours, and on the next page, you'll see we did several press releases. Those tours and press releases did garner several articles in both newspapers over the last several months where they have covered this project pretty in depth, including reaching out to staff for updates about what the status of the project was and what the timeline is for the future. The project was included in 2 special e-newsletters out to the community, highlighting how they could schedule a tour of the station themselves, what the upcoming meetings were and how to find them. It included a video overview of the current status of the police station and where they could go for more information. We also included the updates on the project in 6 of our monthly regular e-newsletters that go out. We did a special utility billing insert in March that included all of the upcoming March public safety facility opportunities for people to go to community meetings. It also provided the website where they could go for more information. So if they wanted to schedule a tour again or attend a meeting in April, they could. We've actually been on Kohai several times. Both the chief and Matt have been on there. Rachel and I have been on there, and the mayor has been on Kohai. And I've actually done an additional Kohai radio program since creating this presentation. So I think all in all, we've had, I think, 4 or 5 Kohai radio interviews covering the project. In addition to the Zoom and in-person meetings that we held for community engagement meetings, we also reached out to a lot of the local organizations in town and our representatives to give presentations to their groups or to them as our representatives. So we've spoken with Representative Betsy Johnson and Brad Witt, County Commissioner Margaret Magruder. We spoke at a South Columbia County Chamber of Commerce coffee clatch. We presented at the St. Helens School District Board, Rotary, Columbia County Democrats and Republican groups, the Homeland Security Emergency Management Commission, Columbia County Traffic Safety Committee, and both the Kiwanis Daybreakers and Kiwanis Noon group. We did reach out to several other groups in town, but because of COVID, several of them are not currently hosting meetings, so we weren't able to present to those groups. We also created 4 videos to highlight the current status of the police station. That current status video was done in both English and Spanish and promoted. All of these are on our website, and they were also promoted through the e-newsletter and through social media. We did officer testimonials of current conditions and why they'd like to see a new facility. We reached out to businesses and community members and did video testimonials with both of them as well. And then at this point, I know we're well over 50 posts and tweets since making this slideshow, promoting the project on both the city and police department's social media accounts. We've done 2 press releases, which again, both newspapers have covered this project in depth multiple times. We increased our police activity dissemination on the police department's social media and through press releases. So since having our staff community engagement meetings, we decided that it was important to highlight the work that our police department is doing in the community to keep people safe. We enjoy a relatively safe community environment compared to the larger metro area to the south of us, but we also are not the small, sleepy community that a lot of people think that we are. So we really wanted to highlight only the high interest cases to showcase to people why it's important that we have a functioning public safety facility. And this goes back to the importance of this project when it comes to both the safety of our community and the safety of our officers. So we highlighted several of the high profile cases through press releases, which I think almost all of them made it into the newspapers, did website updates and social media sharing of that information. We also had several strategic communications meetings between staff. It also included industry experts such as the people who ran the polling for us and a successful bond campaign manager. So what else can we do? If you decide that we need to delay this decision, what more can we do at this point that isn't what we have already done? And I've outlined here some possibilities. A lot of them start to cost us a significant amount of money. And I'm not sure for the amount of money that we would be having to throw at these options if it's worth the cost. We can do an in-house mailer. We can also do newspaper insert mailers. Those can be very, very costly in the range of $8,000 to $10,000. And from my experience and talking to other communicators, the majority of those mailers get thrown in the trash without anybody noticing them. They don't read them, they just go right in the recycle bin. We can do printed out door hangers and pay for distribution on people's doors. We can run ads in the newspapers that will cost approximately $1,000 per half-page ad that we run. We can also pay to digitally advertise through the newspapers so that we're not the ones on our page paying to boost posts, but the newspaper does it for us. If we do both newspapers, that runs in the market of $300 to $500 for about a week of boosting social media posts. And then the other key element, which I believe Rachel is on here to talk about a little later in this presentation, is what do you do if you decide that this goes to a vote, either for the fee or for a bond? At that point, all of our in-house communication has to stop immediately. You cannot use staff time or city money to pay for a to promote voting for a bond or a fee. So at that point, you would have to hire a campaign manager, and that campaign manager would be responsible for doing all communication for that bond or that fee vote.
All right, thanks, Crystal. So I'm just going to talk briefly about, and Brian, feel free to chime in here as well if you'd like to speak as well. So before every webinar, Zoom meeting, we tried to do some initial polling right before we got started of what kind of support we had for the attendees. And then we also did a closing poll to see if anything had changed. What we found from doing those surveys is roughly 86% already supported a new public safety facility from the beginning. After seeing the presentation, that actually increased to 93% in support of the ad hoc committee's recommendations when the presentation was over. We've had multiple comment periods, as you know, during each of our meetings at the work session and regular sessions. You've heard from a number of committee members as well as community members that have voiced support verbally and written testimony that's been provided to you through email and physical copies. From my recollection and my knowledge, I have only received 2 negative testimonies, 1 verbal and 1 written. And then a couple things that we wanted to make sure that you recall of the letters of support from the St. Helens Police Association, as well as the letter of support from the Columbia County Republican Party. There's a couple quotes there from the bottom of just a couple quotes that I thought were great to point out. And then there have been multiple letters to the editor from our community members in support. From my recollection, I have only seen 1 negative letter, and that was questioning the method of going for a public vote or doing this administratively. And now I'm going to hand it off to Chris Iverson, who was elected the chair of the ad hoc committee. And he's going to talk to you just briefly about his thoughts, representations, and the recommendations that he made to you as council. Chris?
He must know I'm an insurance agent because he said just briefly. I think that was a hint. So anyway, hello, everybody. Yeah, I had the pleasure of serving on the ad hoc committee as the chair. And we had a lot of really good discussions about this. One of the biggest things that we said was we wanted to see community engagement, especially if we were going to make the recommendation that the council make this decision administratively and not go out for a vote. We thought this was too big of an issue for the council not to take it on. We strongly encourage them to take this on as an administrative decision. It's not a matter of if you need it, you absolutely need it. One of the other issues we were talking about was increased funding for utilities assistance for our seniors and our low income people. And I believe that the staff has addressed that, the committee discussed it. And I'm going to hop back up to number 1 for a minute. I think Crystal just gave a very, very good presentation about the community involvement in this. I can't believe anybody can say that they haven't had ample opportunity for input on this issue. Some of the other issues that the committee came up with is we certainly want to try to get the debt down if we can. Some of the ideas that were discussed were selling the current station. The other issues were research other funding sources such as grants. I believe Commissioner Topaz or excuse me, Councilor Topaz brought up, is there going to be buckets of money out there coming from the the new infrastructure bill that they're proposing. If that passes, it's a great time to look into that to see if there's going to be any funds available. Some of the things I wanted to bring up in addition to that, you know, I served, and most of you know this, I served on the council over 20 years ago. This issue was on the council's agenda then, and we failed to do anything about it. The other thing that I think that we really failed to do is to at least set up a fund for you guys back then, so the councils going forward would have some kind of funding. We have essentially the same amount of officers that we had in 1970, but yet our city's grown by almost double. Back in the early 70s, we had 20 reserve officers. And those officers were out patrolling by themselves in cars, and they helped supplement the full-time officers. We essentially right now have 18 officers that go out and patrol the roads, but yet our city has over doubled in size. So it's just imperative that we do something with this facility. We currently have a 2,000 square foot facility, and McKinsey is recommending we have a 20,000 square foot facility. That's 10 times the size. So I think that just speaks volumes when you talk about the need for this. And if people don't understand why we need it, I think that in itself just says so much. We need a facility that's 10 times as big just to kind of stay even with what we've got going on right now. My final point will be that we can't have a town that continues to grow and have services that stay the same or reduce. And it will never cost less money than it does right now to build that facility. I wish we would have done it 20 years ago, but if we go forward and don't do this now, it's just going to cost us more money. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope you will move forward with getting this facility done.
Thanks, Chris, for your comments. I'm just going to go over a couple quick things and then hand it off to John, who's going to talk some more about some of the finances. So I wanted to touch on why the Public Safety Fund and why the committee chose the Public Safety Fund. One of the main reasons was that the Public Safety Fund does not actually increase any property taxes within the city of St. Helens. The Public Safety Fund can also, just as well as a general obligation bond, be used for construction, as well as a Public Safety Fund can be used for ongoing maintenance, which is something a general obligation bond cannot do. As a public safety fund, the ad hoc committee saw that a public safety fund was the most equitable way for renters and homeowners to pay their fair share. And I want to reemphasize that when I say renters, I don't necessarily mean single family homes. I also want you to consider and think about the apartment complexes that we have currently in our city, as well as the ones that are going to be developed in the near future. It was imperative that the ad hoc committee thought that each renter in an apartment should pay the same fair share as a homeowner, as a business. Whether you live in a studio apartment and you're paying $800 a month in rent, whether you have an $800,000 home, you are getting the same level of service from our police agency. And so that is why they thought that the Public Safety Fund was the most equitable way for the city to share the cost of this. The monthly rate can actually lower as the city grows. Essentially, we have a certain amount of customers in our utility base. If those customers grow, we get more residents, more businesses, more commercial. You can actually make the decision as a city council to either lower the fee monthly because you have more customers to make up the payment, or you can keep that payment the same and actually pay off the debt service faster. So that would be an option for the city council to decide at a later point. The Public Safety Fund, as I mentioned earlier, has a more flexible funding options. You can choose as a city council to raise or lower the fee to pay down it faster. If we take out a 20 or 30 year revenue bond to pay this off, we can actually still collect more. If we end up coming back to you and saying it's going to end up being $4 per month for a residential customer, you could decide as a city council, hey, you know what, $4 is pretty cheap. I think we should go for $5 or $6 and decide to increase what we bring in as revenue, which means that we will have funds available to pay it off. And that's just sooner that you can take that fee off of a resident. And then overall, it is less expensive from a general obligation bond as a monthly standpoint that I'm going to show you here. So at the top, you'll see the tax assessed value for a property home ranging from $300,000 to $500,000. And you'll see that we looked at 4 different options, both 20 years and 30 years of a general obligation bond and a public safety fund. In every scenario, the public safety fund was a cheaper monthly expense. And I do want to mention that these rates that you see are based on the current market rates that we looked at in December, okay? Obviously, we know there's a lot going on in the economy and a lot can change even by the day. So when we come back to you, whether you want to look at a general obligation bond or a public safety fund, our financial advisors and bond counsel will update to our current market analysis to find, and we'll go through and figure out what those monthly rates could be. I don't expect that they will increase too dramatically, but instead of $6 to $11.50, you might be looking at $6.25 to $11.75 or something like that. Just goes to show you the longer you wait, the longer, if this can is pushed down the road, as Chris mentioned, the more it's going to cost. I did want to bring in a chart here because I'm a finance guru kind of geek and I love charts. So this is a utility rate comparison that I updated back in December, so just a few months ago. It is based on a utility bill for a family of 4 based on monthly billing. So I actually took a current employee who had a family of 4 and looked at their utility bill and compared that to some of our surrounding communities. And as you can see, St. Helens is actually just a little bit under the middle and actually only about $3 or so more than Scappoose and Forest Grove. So we're not that far of being one of the highest in the areas. I often get plagued with those questions and answers of why our utility bill or why the water bill is so high. Oftentimes when I inquire with a person about who asked that, it is oftentimes somebody who is just coming into the city off of a well, and so they're used to not paying anything for water. And I understand that jump going from a well to an actual service provider. There are a lot of pros and cons either way you look at it, but going from a well to a city provided service is definitely a large jump, paying $100 to 0. So, but I just want to note also in the green section is the other fees that some communities have. You can see the green here in St. Helens, that is the $2 community recreation fee that is currently on bills. As Shauna mentioned earlier in her presentation, that has a sunset date of December of this year, so that could potentially or will go away unless you enact another resolution. The other fees in Portland have to do with the Superfund site. Cornelius has a general fund service charge of $10 per month. I used to live in Cornelius. I used to pay that every month. And then Hillsborough has a few other transportation charges. If you live in South Hillsborough, they have a fee that they add on specifically for those residents for the new fiber network that they're putting in, and a few other kind of little odds and balls depending on where you live. So just wanted to throw that comparison out for you so that you know, because I know residents will come and question you on why you're adding it to utility bills and why our utility bills are already so high. So I'm going to talk briefly about this slide, and then John is going to talk about the bottom section. I outlined here 2 different payment scenarios. They're both based on a public safety fund on a fee, and you are looking at a 30-year level debt payments and then an interest-only payment. And an interest-only payment is where you only pay interest for the first 3 years. So here, what we're looking at is years 1 through 3. Under a 30-year level payment system, we're paying $800,000 a year for 30 years. It's pretty simple. If you were going to set that rate today, it would be $9 per month for a resident customer. As an interest-only payment for the first 3 years, the payment that would be required by the city is $550,000. That equates to about $6 per month for a residential customer. And then years 4 through 30, obviously you're still paying the $800 here. On the interest-only payments, the payments go up to about $850,000 per month, and that gets you to starting around $9.50 based on the growth estimates that we see in our community. So as I mentioned earlier, the utility customers rise, so we can actually lower the cost. That's the $650 that it could eventually go down throughout the years. And I'm going to have John talk about some of the dedicated yearly revenue and ideas that we've discussed internally as staff to help mitigate some of this $9 or $6 cost that residential customers will see. John? You're on mute, so I need you to unmute first there.
Just so excited to talk. Yeah, thanks, Matt. Before I do talk about the notion of dedicated revenues, I want to talk about a couple other things as far as, pulling the lens back a little bit about how we fund, our infrastructure projects around the city. And the public safety facility is most certainly an infrastructure project, and okay. And then I wanted to close with a recommendation for tonight's meeting. And so how we fund infrastructure projects in the city, there's two strategies. One of them is a pay-as-you-go model or a pay-as-we-use model. And the example that I give is a street lasts 20 years. And ideally, if knowing that that street's only going to last 20 years, we're going to put 1/20th that money into an account, so that in 20 years we'll be able to roll right in and pay as we go, keep on going. And versus the other end of the spectrum, where it's, the road's shot or it doesn't exist at all, and we need to build it, and we go out and take out debt and then just pay as we use it. And the reality is that we've done a little bit of both, and most projects are moving. Infrastructure in this country has been on a 30-year vacation. People are just milking things, letting them wear out, and not making that reinvestment, or just not able to, due to initiatives like Measure 5 and our low tax rate and things of that nature. I wanted to touch on some successful projects we've done with that, and one of them that comes to mind is the water filtration plant. That was about $11 million project. That was we're just about on the tail end of having that all paid for. But as we went into that, we had some reserves built up through the water rates that went into that project, and the other part of it had some debt associated with it. So, and that became part of the water rate. It's built into it, and your rates are helping to pay for that, the debt of that facility. And if we had to not make that investment and build that plant today, it would probably be twice as much money. So, and that's kind of where I'm going with the public safety facility here. So the council's role in this as policymakers is, and if the staff has heard me talk about, our job as staff is to bring you decisions that change the course of this community. And they're not all good ideas sometimes, but they're things that are part of strategic plans, or that part of moving the city forward. And we've done some pretty bold things over the past few years, as far as acquiring the Veneer site, and getting that, embracing that public access and transportation connections and just economic development potentials there. The former white paper site that we went out on a limb and acquired that to make sure that we had a more diversified economy and for the city's future. Even like acquiring the house on 12th Street there for $165,000 seemed like a lot at the time. And this many years, that's we probably double that now today. So that was a good investment. And so we're in the process of transforming their future, and the public safety facility is really a key part of that. The livability, the basic infrastructure for all the reasons we've talked about today. And it's some tough decisions. I think we're moving from establish the need, and we're working on the how. And the how is going to likely be some hybrid of dedicating some revenues and asking the public for some money on their utility bill, and finding that balance that achieves that. So some of on your screen here, you see the one thought path here is that we dedicate, well, in Canada, they call it the syntax suite, but where you have your anything to do with cannabis, liquor, or cigarettes is all considered a syntax. And if we were to dedicate all of those revenues, it would accumulate to $7.50. So it's a pretty good chunk of that. The backside of that is that those are revenues we're already using for different things to support general fund services. So there's going to have to be some backfill opportunities. Maybe it's not all of that. So there's a sort of, that's basically the key point I wanted to make. We know we need it. We haven't saved for it. You know, it's not going to be any less expensive than it is today. And I would like to plant a seed at the council tonight, because it's not on the agenda tonight as far as moving forward from this as a recommendation, is that we direct staff to come back with a public safety fund. And that ordinance would have a provision in it that would create the fee by a future resolution. And that fee would be a future discussion. That discussion would consider a lot of the variables we're talking about and finding that balance between the balance of existing revenues, pay as we go, to pay as we use, the what the rate needs to be on a public safety fee. So that's it. So.
Well, I definitely like the dedicated yearly revenues ideas. And like you said, we utilize a lot of that in other areas. But it sure helps to have that available in the one-time revenues, grants.
And Mayor, if I can quickly mention, the reason I included the interest only here for the first 3 years was a possible transition time of dedicating some of these revenues that we currently use in our community development as well as our general fund. Obviously, it's very hard to flip the switch and direct all of these revenues this coming July towards the public safety facility. However, it could be done. And it could also be done incrementally over the course of 2 or 3 years that we were only making interest only payments.
Matt, I've got a couple of questions for you. You mentioned, what was the percentage of the people in our town that wanted the police station and thought they needed it?
Are you referring to the polling that we did?
That's correct.
It was, I believe, 86% that already were there in support of it before we even began. And then after giving the presentation, it rose to 93%.
Okay. It looks like the people of the St. Helens area tell us that we need a police station. We know from the parts we need a police station, but the people of our town believe, let's have a little bit of faith in them. Now, if I'm going to use a bulldozer to do some work, I can run levers and make the blade go up and down and the tracks go forward. But if I'm halfway smart, I use experts to drive that bulldozer. I think what we ought to do is go for it and have financial experts tell us the best way to go for it. And let's get this thing on the road.
Absolutely. We do actually have our financial advisors. I believe they're on the meeting tonight. If you would like to talk with them right now, we have Duncan Brown and Golgan Olger from our bond counsel and our financial advisors. They are available if you have specific questions. If the council decides to move forward with any method as a public safety fund or a general obligation bond, they are kind of on the clock for us to help out in any way and come back and assist myself, John, staff, and you as council to bring you back what may be the best formula to move forward. And I see
basically this money handling takes experts, and I'm not an expert in money handling. I'm going to go through what the experts say. I know I need a police station, and the rest of this is, to me, a waste of time. It's time to get going.
Yep, I think I'm going to invite Golgan just to speak for a few minutes since she popped on. She is one of our bond counselors.
Hi, everyone. I am Golgan Orr. I'm a bond lawyer at a law firm called Hawkins, Delafield and Wood, and my practice is exclusively doing financings for Oregon governments. And I'll just touch very briefly on sort of the process if you decide to move forward with this, which is that, as the mayor pointed out, or as the city administrator pointed out, you would be coming back with a bond authorization, and you would be pledging your full faith and credit, and then expect to pay from this dedicated fee, and investors would get information about the fee when they're making a decision about whether or not to buy the bond. And this is something that is very common in Oregon, to pledge a full faith and credit and expect to pay from a different source of revenue. So it's certainly something that the market sees all the time, and that won't be surprising to investors.
Did anyone have any specific questions financially that Golgan may be able to answer for you? All right, I don't hear any Golgan, but we will definitely be in touch.
Great, sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Sorry, I was getting a call about my car's warranty.
All right, I think I'm gonna hand it off to Rachel to speak for a little bit.
Yes, hi, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. As Crystal alluded to, if you are to go with a referral to voters via general obligation bond, public employees may not campaign in any fashion and public resources may not be used in any campaign. Just wanted to provide you some resources here. It's an Oregon law, Section 450, various sections cover this. The Secretary of State's website is amazingly helpful. There is the county, city, and district referral manual that you should refer to. And at least 2 people will have to come together and create a political action committee to finance this campaign. That can be done again through the Secretary of State or STAR website. A rough idea of a budget, it would be approximately $100,000 to launch and run a successful campaign. Just put some estimates down there for your information. Happy to provide resources, but staff and city resources cannot be used. Thank you.
All right.
So, Councillor, I think John wanted to finish up with just a couple. What we are hoping is going to be a decision for later tonight during the work session agenda items. John, did you want to speak to this?
Yeah, we're looking for, I think it's pretty clear that there's been a tremendous amount of effort that's gone into this, and it's certainly something that is long overdue and the community needs. So we're trying to figure out how to get it done. And so there's a couple of options. See there, option 1 is to create a fund, dedicate revenues, and just proceed administratively with this whole process. If that's what we're recommending. That's what it's been recommended. If the council is a little bit less comfortable with that, and actually there's a blend of these options that you could get started with one and then to refer at some point later if if there was a lot of outcry about it. The option 2 would be to either proceed with put a question squarely to the voters as far as a geo bond coming off property taxes, which has a lot of risk to it. It also isn't really, staff doesn't feel it's the most equitable way to go about this either. And then the other is just that question of whether the surcharge continues on the bills could be referred to the voters. And option 3, the no action, we put that up there because that's what's been happening for the last 30 years. And we know it'll be, we know we need it, and it's, if we do nothing, we're going to get nothing. So.
Yeah, so tonight would just be in next steps moving forward is what you're asking for, and what that could look like a multitude of anything.
Yeah,
and everything.
Directing staff to come back with, if it's going to be a public safety fund, it'll be an ordinance, and that ordinance will have the provision for a resolution, but it won't set a fee. It would just establish the authority to set a fee, and then you'd come back, you'd review it, you'd approve it, it'd be read a couple times, and it'd be kind of a rollout. And then as that ordinance is approved, then we look at or while that's happening simultaneously, we'll look at do the financial calcs to know what it might be, what allocates, what resources we can allocate, what kind of funding terms. Put it back together.
Okay. Any questions for John?
Yeah, so I just want to make sure I understood clearly. So that, and also Mayor, so tonight, if we are making a decision, it would be a decision to direct staff to do the work and then come back at future meeting with the specific recommendation or sample ordinance. So we'd be talking at least 2 weeks further so that public would have an ability to provide their input at public comments or that type of thing. So I just wanted to make clear tonight, any decision we're making is directing staff to provide us with some concrete.
That's correct.
Proposals. Yeah. Okay.
There'll be a couple readings. We get read ordinances twice, so you'd have 2 weeks, another 2 weeks, another 2 weeks, and then that. Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
It's at least helping us set the direction of whether it's going to be a general obligation bond or a public safety fund. And that's really the crossroad that we're at right now.
Understood. And I'm not unwilling to go ahead and make that decision. I'm ready to choose a path on the crossroads. And but I just want to make clear, be sure that I'm taking that first step that I'm not charging off running. Yeah.
I'd rather you ask than not be sure. So thank you very much, Councilor Berkeley. Okay.
If I can keep going for a second, that's a real stepwise way to proceed. From my opinion, is that you pass the ordinance, whenever you put a fee on it, that's when you're gonna start seeing the most public feedback on it, right? So you'll still have opportunity to take that path if you want to put it out to the voters, or if you just want to proceed. What we learned with the rec fee was that there was very few vocal, but it went away pretty quickly. They got used to it, started to see the value of the program.
I just want to see what other revenues and other options we have before and what the rate would look like. Not $6.50 to $11 is a big difference. I mean, that's $5 a month. That's $60 a year. So I want to know that difference and what it looks like. So, all right, and that's what we'd be directing staff to do. So. Okay, any other questions for John? Okay, now we're going to review updates and personnel policies and procedures handbook. Kathy.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm good. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good. So last year, you'll remember in June that you adopted a new personnel policies and procedures handbook that went into effect on July 1st. Since July 1st, we've had some federal and state changes, and also CIS has recommended some updates to the policy just for clarification. So in the memo that I gave you guys in the packet, the first section that was amended or is proposed to be amended is 003, the time off and the leaves of absence section. And this has to do with religious observances, the leave and accommodation policy. And it clarifies and adds sincerely held. It just basically is helping to clarify if we get somebody who wants to take advantage of this policy, then it just has some clarification language in there. The attorneys, Jordan Ramus, Matthew Call with Jordan Ramus has reviewed it, and he has advised us that we amend the proposed language to include practices. We had taken out practices at CIS's recommendation, so the recommendation is to put that back in there. So we will do that. And that was based on the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission guidance. And also the other section is 005 for miscellaneous policies. For some reason, CIS didn't like the cellular devices policy. They want the mobile devices policy. So language was changed from cellular to mobile, and I'm not quite sure why, but I guess maybe that's just the standard in the mark or for technology. And then we added a city provided included, paid for, as well as city provided when it comes to city issued cellular devices, mobile devices, excuse me. The other area was political activity, and it addressed personal political activity and expression per CIS's recommendation. And that has to do with basically your expression as an employee, what you're bound to as far as what the laws allow. I did vet this through the unions for all of this, but both unions were okay with the language. We did have to do some clarification to make sure that the ability for a union member to wear a button or a t-shirt that had their union name on it was still okay, and that was not considered illegal. And then the other section we added was a section that CIS recommended on hiring of family members, just to clarify that for any time we ever have something like that comes along. So Jordan, as I said, Jordan Ramus did review the resolution and the proposed recommendations, and they wanted some clarification on the providing proof for sincerely held religious belief. And so there's some language that they've recommended to clarify it. And I definitely agree with that recommendation. So, and there was another tiny correction to the recommendation that I sent to you guys at the beginning of this meeting. So as far as the motion for tonight, that email that I sent includes the language for that motion. And that's about it. Does anybody have any questions?
I've got a couple there, Kathy. A couple of things I thought were vague, and I just haven't had a chance to read through everything. But I'm going to hone in right now on the area having to do with marijuana at this moment. I've recently had opportunity to find out from some anesthesiologists the problems that marijuana causes people in their health. Mainly people who are on marijuana, if you have to anesthetize them, you need a huge amount more anesthetic. And this is well after, I mean, they haven't smoked or taken a food item with it for some time, so their blood test would come up 0, but they do have some neurologic changes, which if they get hurt, then the amount of pain medicines and so on would be quite different, and which puts us at a liability. So the question is, how do we handle some of these strange habits that this marijuana is causing? And we are now coming up to possibly a national law change on marijuana. How does that, I mean, it's going to affect us if something goes south, because these people are not going to be able to treat it normally, the way we normally handle sick or injured people.
Well,
so,
CIS has recommended a couple of different options for language for marijuana use, and there's a 0 tolerance, and then there's a partial tolerance. It has to do with other things. The city adopted the 0 tolerance, so we don't tolerate any kind of marijuana use. So if that's happening, then if somebody gets tested, then there's, then we have to go on further with that. Does that answer your question?
Kind of, because if someone gets hurt now and has to go have surgery real quick, they're in a very different ballpark than, say, someone who hasn't been using. And the bad part from the medical end is the federal government said the medical industry, universities can't investigate this, or they lose all of their grant. So if a medical school at a university tries to investigate, the whole university loses its grants. So we're in a big fog, and some of these things are coming up where one of our employees who could have used it and is tested okay. I mean, if the standard test, he's clean, or she's clean, but they still have a handicap, if you would, a medical chemical handicap. I just wondered how that handles out. Because where does zero tolerance, the definition of that, is that you haven't smoked in 6 months or you haven't smoked at all? That's really, it's a snotty question.
Well, the interpretation of zero tolerance is that our expectation of our employees is that they are not using marijuana. We have zero tolerance for the use of it. So if something happens and we end up having to test somebody because of an accident, or we are suspicious of some sort of drug use, then that, that takes on a whole nother aspect.
So it's quite confusing and involved still.
I think zero tolerance is zero tolerance, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Not a question, but I think as I was thinking about why the recommendation is to strike cellular and move to mobile, is that I think some of the original technology was based on the phones just using these different cells, but now we can access through Wi-Fi. And we can satellite phones and things like that. So I think that's maybe why it's mobile, that we can have different mobile devices, but we're no longer dependent on, say, the system of cells that was once predominant. My speculation.
That makes sense.
Anyway.
Thanks.
All right, thank you, Kathy. So I would like to propose that we move our strategic plan updates and city administration report to tonight. We'll take a little break and then we'll go into, because Councilor Topaz has to leave a little before 4, right? Councilor
That's
Topaz?
correct.
So I'm gonna take those and move them for tonight, and we'll take a 10-minute break, and then we'll be going into executive session shortly after that. As previously announced, we're going into executive session ORS 192.6602F and E. So let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break, and then we will be going into executive session. So see you at 3:19.
Hey, Mayor.
Yeah.
Are we adjourning the work session?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are adjourned. Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure that.
Yep.
Stay. Okay, thank you.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
Are you going to be able to have somebody to take over?
Yeah, I have to. If I need to leave the executive meeting for any time, I can make John or Kathy a host, and you can continue working. So
good. Okay. Yep.